Hi everyone, my name is Monique.
And I'm Naveen from Before You Play.
And today we have another Filler Friday for you. This time it is for Station Master.
This one's designed by Chris Bayless. It originally came out in 2004, so this is kind of a reprise of it. Like you said, it's called Station Master, and it plays 2 to 6 players in roughly 30 to 60 minutes.
Now this edition of the game is published by Calliope Games, and it does say 30 to 50 minutes, but in lower player counts it can be played quickly, and so that is why it still qualifies as a Filler Friday.
Yeah.
Now today we are not actually going to play through it, we are just going to show you how it plays so you can kind of see what this game is all about. But before we get started, we would like to kindly please ask that you turn on your Klingon subtitles just in case we make any rules mistakes, and if you enjoy content like this and would like to see more, please consider subscribing. And with that, we're going to get started. So, if you please direct your attention to the center of the table, we are all set up here for a 2 or 3 player game of Station Master.
Yes.
We have components out for 3 players. So before we get started, I just want to kind of show you around the table. Here we have all of our locomotives, because in this game we are going to be filling locomotives with passengers in order to score points. We also have this big Station Master deck, which is going to be comprised of the cards that we have in our hands. And we each also have our own player pieces. Now, this version of the game does come with like upgraded player bits, and so each player pieces are different colors, but they're also different shapes. So yeah. I believe mine, I think they're mirrors.
They look like, yeah.
They look like mirrors, and then this is like a boot.
A boot, and then I have a top hat.
Yes. And so there are other pieces because it does play up to 6 players, but these are just the ones that we have set out. So this game is all about trains. We are going to be putting out rail cars behind locomotives.
Yep.
We're going to be filling the locomotives with passengers and trying to score the most number of points by trying to get our passengers onto the highest scoring trains.
Yep, that's it.
And so we're going to do this round after round until we have filled all of our trains, and whoever has the most points wins. That is essentially the game. Now, we did mention that we're not going to be doing a playthrough of this time because we just don't feel like a 2-player game accurately shows what this game can do.
Yes.
It is playable at 2, but you really do want higher player
counts. Yeah. I would say 3 or 4.
Yes. And so the way that the game works is, like I was mentioning, everybody has these player tokens, and these are representative of our passengers. So if you flip them over, they all have values on them. They're all the same for all the players. We have passengers that are value 3, 2 of them that are 2s, 2 that are 1s, and we have a -1 because this passenger got a discounted ticket onto the train. And so we have them all face down because they're supposed to be a secret. We're not supposed to know which ones our opponents have been putting out. And so we also have a starting hand of 3 Station Master cards. Now this deck is all comprised of different cards that are going to be either rail cars, which look like this, or action cards that look like this. So those are the only 2 things, but a majority of the deck is rail cars.
Right.
And so what you're going to do on your turn is you're either going to play a passenger to one of the locomotives that are face up here, or you're going to play a card from your hand. And so a majority of the time, when you play cards from your hand, you're going to be putting these rail cars out. So the way that the rail cars work is you just put them behind one of the 3 face-up locomotives on the table. Now, the number of locomotives is dependent on player count. So right now, this is for 2 or 3 players. And so what I would do if I wanted to play a card is I would choose one of the locomotives and I would put my rail card behind it. So say maybe I'll put mine right there. And then I would draw up a new card and that would end my turn. Now the purpose of the rail cars is they're the ones who are determining the value of the train. Because right now, what we see on the trains are the numbers at the top left-hand corner. All that is telling us is how many rail cars are allowed to be behind the train before it takes off.
Before it departs.
It doesn't tell us at all how many points it's going to earn us. And so these rail cars are going to be determining that. So there are 3 main types of rail cars. There are the standard rail cars, which look just like this, and they have a positive green number at the top left-hand corner. And they're also called coaches.
Coaches, yes.
This is a coach. We also have the opposite of that, which is a freight rail car, and they are negative. The top left-hand corner is a red negative value. And the third type of rail car are the executive class. Now, the way that the executive class rail cars work is at the top left-hand corner. It can score +7 points to a locomotive as long as it is of the executive class. And so this is a locomotive. It has the gold executive class logo underneath its name, and so in this case it would score 7 points for that train. Any other type of locomotive, it would score -4 points instead. That is why there are 2 values there. There are also 3 different types of locomotives. And so there are the standard ones that look like this, and they range anywhere from like 3 to, I think, 8 is maybe like the highest that we've seen. There are the executive class, which we've already discussed, and they pretty much just pair with the executive class coaches. And then we also have the freight train, which is this one in the middle. And you know it's a freight train because it says freight train right there, similar to the executive class. And so what makes this locomotive unique is it turns all of the values at the top left-hand corner to the opposite values. So it makes all of the regular green coach cards negative points, and it turns the freight cars, which are the negative point ones, into positive points because freight trains want freight cars, right? So that is how that works. I hope that wasn't too confusing. And so say we have something that looks maybe like this. The other thing that you can do on your turn, instead of playing a card, is you can play a passenger token to one of the locomotives. And so say it's Naveen's turn. Naveen chooses to play a passenger token to this locomotive. You would always play it to the locomotive and not to the coaches. Of course, yep. And so he would play his passenger token secretly just like this, so that nobody knows what value is under there.
Right.
And so that top left-hand corner number that I was discussing earlier is not only the maximum value of rail cars that can be played behind the train, but it's also the maximum number of passengers that can exist on this train. And so maybe Red played this passenger on their turn, and maybe I played this passenger.
Okay, and then I would play a rail card. Let's say that.
Right there. And so now we have reached our limit, because this locomotive has a limit of 3. As soon as you hit that limit, this train takes off and we score it. So the way that that would work is we add up the values of all of the values on the rail cars. And so in this example, this would be positive 6 plus 2 is 8, minus 2 is 6. Yep. And then we would turn over all of the passengers, and you would multiply the value of the locomotive by the value of your passenger. That's how many points that you would get. So if I were purple, I would get 12 points. So would Red, and Naveen would get 18 points.
Moving ahead.
But the same thing would be true if this were a negative value. So say Naveen didn't play this card and he played this card instead, which is that executive class. Since this locomotive is not an executive class locomotive, then it would be negative 4 points instead. So then this would be negative 4 plus negative 2, negative 6, plus positive 2, which would be negative 4.
Exactly.
And so we would all get negative points instead. So that is kind of the chaos factor in this game.
Now bear in mind, we do have the negative passenger token. So had you played a negative, multiplying by a negative, you get positive points.
Exactly. And as I was mentioning earlier, if you don't want to play a rail car or put out a passenger, the other option, if you have them in your hand, are action cards. And so action cards kind of like spice things up in the game.
They do.
They can do really extreme things. So some examples include the transfer, which allows you to remove up to 3 passengers from any one train and place them on any other valid trains. So you can pretty much I could just swoop up Naveen and person number 3 and put them in different rail cars if I wanted to score this by myself. Another thing you can do is you can add the caboose. You put it at the very end of a train to automatically complete it and immediately score it. So those are just a couple examples of action cards. And that is pretty much the whole game. You play until every single train in the locomotive deck has been played and scored. And once that is all done, then whoever has the most points wins.
There is an official app for this game, so that is very handy, and it's really, really easy to use as well.
But that's the entire game. That is Station Master. So it is chaotic, I will
say. Yes, it can be very chaotic.
This is one of those games where you are playing your opponents. Like it's very much like a meta game. You're trying to figure out, where are my opponents going? Did the passenger that they put out on this train, was that a negative value? Are they planning on tanking that train?
Are you going to try to multiply a negative by a negative?
Yes.
You have to kind of keep track of people's pawns. And by the way, once you place one of your passengers, it's stuck there until that train either scores or some sort of card manipulates it a different way.
Yeah, so you can kind of keep track of which passengers people have left.
So if you accidentally play your 3 out somewhere and now you really want your 3 in a more juicy area, you can't do it. That's what it is. Well, thank you guys so much for watching the Teach. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing.
Thank you. Bye.